Alhamdulillah, نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا ما يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We continue today with our reading and our review of the book منهاج السالكين وتوضيح الفقه في الدين أو منهج السالكين وتوضيح الفقه في الدين, the methodology of the travelers, if you will, the salikin, of the wayfarers, of those that are journeying towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with appropriate behavior. وَتَوْضِيحُ الْفِقْهِ فِي الدِّينِ, and the explanation and elucidation upon fiqh in the religion, and understanding our religion correctly. باب ما يوجب الغسل وصفته, and the chapter of what obligates ghusl, what makes ghusl mandatory, and the description of how to make ghusl. He says, وَيَجِبُ الْغُسْلُ مِنْ الْجَنَابَةِ وَهِيَ إِنْزَالُ الْمَنِيِّ بِوَطْعٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ. He said it is mandatory to make ghusl from the following things. The first thing that requires a person to make ghusl is al-janaba, which is a number of things. Al-janaba, any major ritual impurity. Wahiyya, which is inzalul maniyyi bi wat'in aw ghayrihi, is that a person ejaculates sperm on account of intercourse or other than that. Any meaning, if a person has a dream, or if a person, even the muqaddimat of al-jima', things, akramakumullah, that lead to intercourse, of muda'aba, of those types of precursors with one's wife. Grow up. Those types of things that lead up, we're broadcasting live. Calm down. That lead up to intercourse. If a person was to not make it, whatever causes that to leave from him, then this requires al-ghusl. It requires al-ghusl. That was you straightening yourself up. أو بِالْتِقَاءِ الْخِتَانَيْنِ, or by the two, what they call it, khitan, the two circumcised parts touching one another. And what is meant by that is al-ilaj, it's penetration, and not just touching, actual penetration. Even though the hadith says touching, it says here al-tiqa, the meeting of them. What is meant by that is ilaj bi-ijma' al-ulama, as is mentioned here in the footnote. And by the consensus of the scholars, what is meant by that is ilaj is actual penetration. The second thing, khuruju dam al-hayd wal-nifas, whenever the blood of al-hayd wal-nifas exits from the woman, then once it stops, she must make ghusl before she prays. She must make ghusl before she prays. وَمَوْتُ غَيْرِ الشَّهِيدِ, and if a person dies, then they must be washed. If a person dies, then they must be washed, so long as they are not a martyr. The person who is a martyr, and who dies in the path of Allah, in the legislated jihad, not what we find today of jihad fi sabili shaitan, irhab and terrorism and so on and so forth. The person who dies not in qital ta'ifi, qital al-fitnah, the person who dies fi sabilillah, they are in a jihad is ibadah, it has shurut. And if a person was to perform an act of worship without its conditions, they are mutala'ib bi-shara'. They are playing with the religion. They are playing with the religion. The same is the case with jihad. If a person was to call something jihad that is not legislative jihad, it does not meet the conditions that were explained by the scholars in the course of history, and the ulama, kibar, the senior scholars of today, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, Ahl al-Hadith wal Athar, and he do not view something to be jihad, but rather they view it to be qital al-fitna. And that's not what is meant here, of course. But whenever we speak about such things, it never hurts to reiterate. It never hurts to reiterate. So if a person dies, so long as he's not a shaheed, and because the shaheed, and he is buried where he dies without ghusl. As comes in the hadith, it's mentioned here in the footnote, the hadith of Bukhari and Muslim, that they collected from Abdullah bin Abbas, the authority of Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or rather the hadith of the hadith of Ibn Abbas في الرجل الذي وقصته ناقته, and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by a man who was trampled, killed by his she-camel. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, اغسلوه بماء وصدر, and he washed the man with water and sidr. And so the person who dies, in general, he is to be washed. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ ordered at the death of one of his daughters, and when they were shrouding her body, they were about to wash her, he said, أَغْسِلُوهَا بِمَاءٍ وَصِدْرٍ. In another hadith that's authentic, he said, wash her with water and sidr, which is the lote leaf, sidr. Right? And those that do shrouding are familiar with sidr. وَإِسْلَامُ الْكَافِرِ. So the person who dies is to be washed, so long as he is not a martyr. The evidence that the martyr is not washed, if you will give me a moment. The hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, collected by Bukhari, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam amara bi dafni qatla Uhud fi dima'ihim wa lam yughassalu wa lam yusalla alayhim. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ordered for the deceased, those that were killed at Uhud, to be buried fi dima'ihim, and with the blood still upon their bodies. With the blood still upon their bodies. وَلَمْ يُغَسَّلُوا, they were not washed. وَلَمْ يُصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ, and the Prophet ﷺ did not pray over them. The Prophet ﷺ did not pray over them. In the hadith of Atiyah radiyallahu anha, she said, this hadith is with Bukhari and Muslim, دخل علينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن نغسل ابنته. She said, Atiyah said, we were washing the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ entered upon us, and he said, أغسلناها ثلاثا أو خمسا أو أكثر من ذلك بماء وصدر. And wash her 3 times or 5 times or more than that with water and sidr. With water and sidr. And so this is where the statement of the author comes from, that the person who dies, so long as he is not a martyr. As for what came before that, the departure of the blood of al-hayd wa nifas, the evidence for that is a statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوهُنَّ حَتَّى يَطْحُرْنَ فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَ فَأْتُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ. and do not approach the women until they become pure. And once they tatahharna, and once they purify themselves, once they perform tahara, tatahhur, and once they perform tahara, then you can approach them in a manner that Allah has legislated for you. And so the meaning of that is al-ightisal, فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَا, yani when they purify themselves, meaning when they make ghusl. As comes in the hadith of Aisha, collected by Imam Muslim, that Habiba bint Jahsh shakat ila Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ad-dam. She complained to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about her bleeding. فَقَالَ لَهَا أُمْكُثِي قَدْرَ مَا كَانَتْ تَحْبَسُكَ حَيْذَتُكَ ثُمَّ اغْتَسِلِي. He said, because she had been bleeding for an abnormal period of time, then withhold, and you stop, and you withhold yourself from praying for the amount of time that your hayd would normally prevent you from praying, and then make ghusl. And then make ghusl, because at that point it is istihada, yani it is not just al-hayd, it is the any blood that comes, and after that, and as one narration says, that irq, and it's just a constant bleeding. Wa Islam al-kafir, and if a kafir was to embrace Islam, most of the scholars, they say that if a kafir embraces Islam, that it is recommended for him to make ghusl. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. It is highly recommended because we know the Prophet ﷺ instructed a number of individuals upon embracing Islam to make ghusl. However, we don't know that the Prophet ﷺ, or that it was a practice of his companions after him, to order every single person that entered into Islam to make ghusl. Many people accepted Islam. They were in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. I think the number is around 600,000. Some of the scholars of history mention Muslims that existed that were considered companions of the Prophet ﷺ because they lived to meet the Prophet ﷺ and they were in the area of the Prophet ﷺ, and so on and so forth. So we don't know that every single one of those tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that embraced Islam during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ told them to make ghusl. However, it is something that is highly recommended. It is highly recommended. So when a person embraces Islam, and he might have the situation where it might not be possible to make ghusl. It's good to have in the masjid a shower, just in general, right? For people that are wayfarers and are staying in the masajid and coming through the masajid, and may find themselves coming directly to the masjid from work, and they may be a little funky. May have a nasty, noxious odor to them, and it's good to wash some of that sweat off before they stand in the ranks and harm their brothers with their smell, and so on and so forth. The masjid should have a shower. It's a good thing. But if the masjid doesn't have a shower place for a person, it might be strange to tell a new Muslim, here, take this towel and step in there, because we're about to call the event. The scholars, they say that, and in that situation, and if the عند ضيق الوقت, the time is tight, and there's not enough time for the person to go and make ghusl, and the salah comes in, and يكفيه الوضوء, it's enough for him to make wudu. It's enough for him to make wudu. You can't say, you can't pray with us, because إنما المشركون نجس, the mushrikun are najis, and you just left from a state of najasa dhatiyah, pure najasa. You just got done being a filthy individual, so you cannot pray with us. It's not the case. It's not the case. It's highly recommended, however, that a person makes ghusl upon embracing Islam. قال تعالى وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَطَّهَّرُوا. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He said, if you are junuban فَطَّهَّرُوا, then purify yourselves. So all these things are considered janaba, these 5 things. Janaba from inzal al-mani bi wat'in aw ghayrihi. I have 2 different versions of the book here, and there are 2 different systems of numbering here. One of them is incorrect in one of the copies. And these things fall under al-janaba. And the first is the emergence of semen, or the fluid of the woman even. And also the penetration of sex, even if a person didn't ejaculate. The third is the emergence of menstrual blood and postpartum bleeding. The fourth is the death of a person. He is to be washed, and he is to be washed. The fourth is the non-Muslim becoming Muslim. So these things are all considered janaba. These things are all considered janaba. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He said, or in the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, He said, وَقَدْ أَمَرَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم بِالْغُسْلِ مِنْ تَغْسِيلِ الْمَيِّتِ. Here He's mentioning the evidence after mentioning the different scenarios of what is considered janaba that requires al-ghusl. So He mentions the statement of Allah that when you are junuban, and in a state of junub, then, or a state of janaba rather, when you are in a state of janaba, then purify yourselves. In the statement of Allah, do not approach a woman until they are pure, and once they purify themselves, then approach them in a manner that Allah has legislated, meaning when they make ghusl. And the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered bi ghuslin min taghsil al-mayyit. He ordered with ghusl from washing a deceased person, This is found in the hadith of Qais ibn Asim, who said, أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أريد الإسلام فأمرني أن أغتسل بماء وسدر. Now, next note. He said, من غسل ميتا فليغتسل. من غسل ميتا فليغتسل. And this hadith, some of the scholars graded to be inauthentic. Some of the scholars, they graded the hadith, and whoever washes the person who is deceased, then he must make ghusl. And whoever carries him, then he must make wudu. So the person who washes the deceased person, or the person who is deceased, he is to be washed. However, it is dependent upon the authenticity of the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever washes the deceased person, then let him make ghusl. And whoever carries him, then وَمَنْ حَمَلَهُ فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ. And whoever carries him, then let him make wudu. At Tirmidhi, he said that it is reported in mawquf form. That this statement of Abu Hurairah is reported as a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. He said that it is mawquf, that it is what is most authentic about it is mawquf. And some of the scholars, they said that the hadith is ma'alul, and that the hadith has defects in it. The hadith has defects in it in marfu form, and it is not accepted as evidence in the religion. Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, Abdullah, the son of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he said that Asma bint Umays غسلت Abu Bakr as-Siddiq حين توفي. That Asma bint Umays washed the body of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq when he died. ثم خرجت فسألت من حضرها من المهاجرين. This hadith is found, this athar is found in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. And then she left and she asked those that were in her presence from the muhajirin. She said, إني صائمة وإن هذا يوم شديد البرد. She said that I'm fasting, and today is a day that is extremely cold. These are two things. She was an old woman, and she said that I'm fasting, and it's an extremely cold day. فهل علي من غسل? So is there any ghusl upon me? And is it mandatory, compulsory for me to make ghusl? فقالوا لا. And they said that is not the case, that you do not have to make ghusl. So we have from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ this narration that shows that they didn't understand it to be mandatory to make ghusl for a person who was deceased, if you wash the body of a deceased person. Wallahu tabarak wa ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. And Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is the Most High, and He knows best. The Prophet ﷺ ordered the person who embraced Islam to make ghusl. The Shaykh said, وَأَمَا صِفَةُ غُسْلِ النَّبِي صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ مِنَ الْجَنَابَةِ. As for how the Prophet ﷺ made ghusl from janaba, فَكَانَ يَغْسِلُ فَرْجَهُ أَوَّلًا. And he gives the summary of the hadith that we're going to read. And the Prophet ﷺ, firstly, he would wash his private part. Wash his private part. ثُمَّ يَتَوَضَّأُ وُضُوءًا كَامِلًا. And then after that he would make wudu. And after that he would make wudu. Of course that makes sense because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَنْ مَسَّ فَرْجَهُ فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ. وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ مَنْ مَسَّ فَرْجًا فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ. That whoever touches his private part, or in one narration, a private part, then let him make wudu. And let him make wudu. It's from nawaqid al-wudu. Another hadith, a man asked the Prophet ﷺ, and if he touches his private part, and does he have to make wudu? He said, huwa bud'un mink, and he is just another part of you. So the scholar is understanding these two hadith together in as much as that it is a methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And in looking at the text, al-jam'u bayna al-nusus ma amkan, to understand them in light of one another to the best of our ability, is that so long as we are able to bring the text together, we are, and to understand each text in its own understanding. So what is meant is that the person who, in the situation of shahwa, and out of desire, and he touches his private part or the private part of his wife, or so on and so forth, and this is from nawaqid al-wudu. It's from the things that break the wudu. However, if a person and he accidentally brushes against his private part, this sort of thing, akramakumullah, then he doesn't have to make wudu. He doesn't have to make wudu. And so it will make sense, therefore, that a person would wash their private part before, and he making wudu, and then making wudu. So the first thing he would do is he would wash his private part, and then he would make a complete wudu. ثُمَّ يَحْثِيَ الْمَاءَ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ ثَلَاثًا. And then he would splash or dump the water, and he would, with his hands, and he cup the water and pour it upon his head 3 times. يَرْوِيهِ بِذَلِكَ, and making the water penetrate into his hair. ثُمَّ يُفِيضُ الْمَاءَ عَلَى سَائِرِ جَسَدِهِ. And then he would cause the water to be poured upon and to fall upon the rest of his body. ثُمَّ يَغْسِلُ رِجْلَيْهِ بِمَحَلٍ آخَرٍ. And then he would wash his feet in another place. Meaning that if he was in a container making wudu, sitting in like we have tubs now, they would have a place where they would sit to make wudu, and that he would wash his feet separately from the water that may have settled in the bottom, or so on and so forth. وَالْفَرْضُ مِنْ هَذَا. What is mandatory of this, this was the ghusl, that is what is called an ghusl al-kamil, the perfect, complete ghusl. The ghusl that is mujzi, that is enough for a person, is what? That?
Let water touch your whole body.
That's one thing. You're missing the second thing.
First to take the najasa out.
If you have najasa in your body, of course, to remove the najasa. But the first thing is the niyyah. So you have the niyyah, and then you let the water cover the entirety of your body. So if a person was in a state of janaba, and he was walking by the Red Sea, and he just jumped in the Red Sea, he said, man, it's like 120 degrees out here. I'm going to jump in the sea. He jumps in the sea, or he jumps in a lake. And then he gets out and he says, look, I need a ghusl. So I'm just going to make that count as my ghusl. And he didn't what? Didn't have the niyyah. The niyyah is a what? A niyyah is a shart. And a shart, and a shurut sawabiq. And a shurut are things that come before the action. So a person can't make the intention afterwards to... And that's logical. The person can't make an intention afterwards too. And you have something counted there also. So these are 2 things. He said, غَسْلُ جَمِيعِ الْبَدَنِ وَمَا تَحْتَ الشُّعُورِ الْخَفِيفَةِ وَالْكَثِيفَةِ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. He said it is to wash the entirety of the body, and then to wash what is under the hair, whether the hair is thick or thin. Whether the hair is thick or thin. And in the statement of the Shaykh, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala reward him, what is not the case, What is not the case is that any person who has very thick hair, that the water has to penetrate and touch their scalp and so on and so forth, has to soak the entirety of the hair, these sorts of things. Any the person who their hair becomes wet, it's not a condition. If a person has very thick hair, that the water touches their scalp. The authentic narration from Aisha radiallahu anha, as you know that some nationalities of people have thicker hair than other nationalities, right? Where Ubay ibn Ka'ab made the statement, when they asked Ubay ibn Ka'ab about the ghusl, does the hair have to touch the scalp? Does the hair have to touch the scalp? And he replied in the affirmative. Aisha said, يَأْمُرُنَا أَن نُحَلِّقْ رُؤُوسَنَا, and he is Ubay telling us we need to shave our heads, because the women, they have thicker hair, so on and so forth. And so it doesn't mean that a person has to really make a very strong effort for the water to soak all the way down to their scalp. But the hair becoming wet as a person would normally do when they shower, those sorts of things, is what is meant here. Definitely for the hair that is thin, the water should penetrate underneath it. And so this is what is meant by it. And what is meant is that the entire body is washed, and that the water washes what is underneath their hair. Wallahu a'lam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The next chapter, Bab al-Tayammum, the chapter of al-Tayammum. وهو نوع ثاني من الطهارة. We know what tayammum is. He says this is the second type of الطهارة, وهو بدل عن الماء إذا تعذر استعمال الماء لأعضاء الطهارة أو بعضها لعدمه أو خوف ضرر باستعماله. He said this is when water is replaced, and when it's impossible, and it's a replacement for water. And this is when it's impossible to use water, very difficult to use water, or as we say in Jersey, water. Then it is impossible or very difficult, ta'adhara isti'mal al-ma', and it is extremely difficult, abnormally difficult, or impossible for a person to use water, upon the limbs that are normally washed, or some of them, li'adamihi, because there is no water, أو خوف ضرر باستعماله, or he fears harm by using water. He fears harm by using water. What is meant here is physical harm, that's physically going to hurt him. It's physically going to hurt him, and bring pain, make him more ill, that sort of thing. فَيَقُومُ التُّرَابُ مَقَامَ الْمَاءِ. And so in this situation, water takes the place of, or the dirt, the dust, it takes the place of water. The dirt or the dust, it takes the place of water. It takes the place of water. One thing that the scholars mentioned connected to this is that it's mandatory to use water عند توفر الماء, when the water is available. When the water is available. And there's a principle that says ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Whatever it takes to complete an obligation is an obligation. And so a person should make some type of honest effort in trying to secure water. And it's not hard for a person normally in most situations to find water to use, and if water is available. If water is available, and for the person that is not harmed by using the water. In a situation where, if he can't find water, he must make tayammum, and then he must first try to find water. If he cannot find the water, if he has the ability to purchase water, without it being a difficulty upon him, a substantial difficulty upon him, then he does so. And he does so because it doesn't take a whole lot of water for a person to make the ghusl. It doesn't take a lot of water for a person to make wudu, to make the ghusl, so on and so forth. And so the tayammum, where there is not sufficient water available, is after a person has exhausted all other means. فَيَقُمُ التُّرَابُ مَقَامَ الْمَاءِ. And in this situation, the water takes the place of, or the dirt rather, it takes the place, or the dust, it takes the place of water. It takes the place of water. By a person doing the following things. He mentions 4 things. The first thing, يَنْوِيَ رَفْعَ مَا عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْأَحْدَاثِ. He makes the intention to remove the hadath, the impurity from him. The state of impurity, of ritual impurity from him. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ. And then he makes the basmala. He says, Bismillah. He makes a basmala. He says, Bismillah, qiyasan ala al-wudu. And he making qiyas upon wudu. Making qiyas upon wudu. Because it doesn't mention explicitly about tayammum. However, and he does what is possible. And it's possible for him to say the basmala. So he makes the basmala. ثُمَّ يَضْرِبُ التُّرَابَ بِيَدِهِ مَرَّةً وَاحِدًا. And then he strikes the dirt with his hands one time. Then he strikes the dirt with his hands one time. وَيَمْسَحُ بِهِمَا جَمِيعَ وَجْهِهِ وَجَمِيعَ كَفَّيْهِ. And he wipes the entirety of his face with his hands and the entirety of both of his hands with the dirt, with the dust. فَإِنْ ضَرَبَ مَرَّتَيْنِ فَلَا بَأْسٍ. And if he does it twice, if he strikes the dirt twice, then there's no harm in that. And there's no harm in that. In the hadith of Ammar, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا كَانَ يَكْفِيكَ أَن تَقُولَ بِيَدَيْكَ هَكَذَا ثُمَّ ضَرَ بِيَدَيْهِ الْأَرْض. In the hadith of Sahih Muslim, he said, it would have been enough for you to have did like this with your hands. And then he struck his hands, he struck both of his hands upon the earth, ضَرْبَةً وَاحِدًا, one time. Why he said it would have been enough for you is that Ammar covered himself in dust. He said, I rolled in the dirt like an animal would roll in dirt. So he got dust all over him. And the Prophet said, it would have been enough for you. It would have been enough for you to have done like this in the dirt. And he struck the dirt once with his hands. And then he wiped his face and he wiped his hands with the dirt. And then he wiped his left hand over his right and the bottom of his hand over the top of his hand. In the hadith of Jabir and Abdullah ibn Umar, Prophet ﷺ, he said, tayammum darbatan. A tayammum, and he is by two strikes, striking the dirt twice. ضربة للوجه وضربة للوجه وضربة لليدين إلى المرفقين. This hadith is collected by Ad-Daraqutni and Bayhaqi and Hakim. And some of the scholars declared to be weak, and from them is Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala. Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala in his Silsilat al-Ahadith al-Sahihah, he grades the hadith to be inauthentic. He grades the hadith to be inauthentic. And so, in this hadith, and for those that view it to be authentic, and the two strikings is one for the face and one for the hands. وَإِنْ ضَرَبَ مَرَّتَيْنِ فَلَا بَأْسٍ. And so this shows us that the striking the dirt twice is based upon the hadith being authentic, which many of the scholars, some of the scholars say it is, and some of the scholars, he said that it has some weakness in it. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he said, فَلَنْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ مِنْهُ مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ وَلِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Allah. So Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, Surah Al-Ma'idah, tremendous verse. The tafsir of Asadi is translated. How many surahs are translated? They go up to Surah Al-Ma'idah? Surah Al-Ma'idah is translated? I believe so. I think it goes up to Surah Al-Ma'idah at least. I think it stops with Surah Al-Ma'idah at the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah. So if you have it, and you should, even though there are some mistakes in the translation,
Which one?
and there's no such thing as a translation that's free of mistakes. However, there are some observable mistakes, very clear mistakes in the translation of the tafsir of Sa'di. This happens sometimes with a larger publication. It needs a lot of review. It needs a lot of review before it's put into circulation, that sort of thing. But whatever the case, the book has a utility and a person should have it. If you have it in Arabic or if you have the English translation, and you look at verse number 6 of Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is the most comprehensive verse in the Quran about tahara and wudu and tayammum. It's about tahara, tayammum, ghusl, wudu. If a person looks at the explanation of Sa'di, rahimahullah ta'ala, for that verse, he brings 55 ahkam, 55 rulings that are taken from the verse, from the mantuq al-ayah wa mafhumiha, from what is explicit and what is implicit in that verse. It's extremely beneficial. So, Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions this verse here, of course. It is the evidence that is used for a tayammum. And if you do not find water, then make tayammum with sa'idan tayyiba. And with pure sa'id. Sa'id is more than just dirt. And that's something that goes into some intricacies of the Arabic language. Any pebbles, rocks, any different things can be sa'id. If a person is on an airplane, he has to make tayammum. There's nothing else for him to do. He strike against the ground, he can strike against the wall, these sorts of things. The majority of the scholars, they say. So let him make tayammum in such a way, and let him wipe upon his face, or let them wipe upon their faces and their hands from it. Allah doesn't wish to bring about any haraj for you, any difficulty for you. Most of the scholars, they say, or some of the scholars, they say, al-haraj al-ithm. The meaning of al-haraj is al-ithm, sin for you. So Allah has legislated such things for you, so that you will not fall into sin. By not being able to find water and so on and so forth. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ. But rather Allah wants to purify you thereby, and to complete His favor upon you. لَعَلَكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. So that you may be of those that are grateful to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. وعن جابر أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أعطيت خمسا لم يعطهن أحد من الأنبياء قبلي. Jabir ibn Abdullah, he said, I was given 5 things that no one from the prophets عليهم الصلاة والسلام were ever given before me. نصرت بالرعب مسيرة شهر وجعلت لي الأرض مسجدا وطهورا فأيما رجل أدركته الصلاة فليصلي وأحلت لي الغنائم ولم تحل لأحد قبلي وأعطيت الشفاعة وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يبعث إلى قومه خاصة وبعثت إلى الناس عامة متفق عليه. Hadith Bukhari and Muslim of Jabir. Prophet said, I was given 5 things no prophet was ever given before me. I have been aided with reverential fear the distance of a month's journey. The kings of the earth, and he had fear and respect of the Prophet ﷺ. And the nations of the earth respected the Prophet ﷺ, and according to the following of people for the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ will be the level of respect that people have for them. This comes in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Busr. He said, سمعت حديثا منذ زمان إذا كنت في قوم 20 رجل أو أقل أو أكثر فتصفحت وجوههم فلم تر فيهم رجلا يحاب في الله عز وجل فاعلم أن الأمر قرق. He said that when you find yourself amongst 20 men or more than them or less than them, he said, I heard a hadith from the Prophet a long time ago, when you find yourself amongst 20 men or more than them or less than them, you look into their faces and don't see that a single one of them is respected for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, then know that their religion has become very weak. Know that they have become very faint in their religion. And the Imam of the scholars of Tafsir, Ubayd ibn Umair, from the scholars of Mecca in the time and the Tabaqat al-Wusta of the Tabi'een in the second generation of Islam. He said, as was reported by Ibn Abi Shaybah in Kitab al-Iman, he said, al-Iman huyub. Al-Iman is huyub from the word hayba. It is mubalagha. Al-Iman huyub, ay yuhabu ahlu, wa huwa mahdu al-hayba. Wa huwa mahdu hayba. And Iman is pure respect. The person who has Iman according to his level of Iman will be the level of respect that people have for him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I have been aided with a ru'b, masirat shahrin, and for the distance of a month's journey, with reverential fear, for the distance of a month's journey, for the distance of a month's journey. He said, and the earth has been made for me, and a masjidan tahura, and it has been made pure, and a masjid for me, a place of salat for me. And he meaning that previous nations, they would be restricted to their monasteries and to their musalliyat, so on and so forth, to certain designated areas. But the Prophet ﷺ, the entire earth was made as a masjid for him and for his ummah. For him and for his ummah. And there's an authentic hadith that is tremendous. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that when a man prays in the fala, in the outskirts, the wilderness areas, or in the field, so on and so forth, meaning he is away from the masajid, and he makes the adhan and the iqama, yusalli ma'ahu min khalqillah, and he there prays with him from the creation of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, ma la yablughuhu basaruh, and that which his eyes cannot see the extent of. If he was able to see, he would not be able to see how many of the malaika and the creation of Allah and so on and so forth are praying with him. When he does what? When he calls the adhan, when he calls the iqama. And if he just calls the iqama, then what? Yusalli ma'ahu malikahu, malakahu, then his two angels pray with him. Then his two angels pray with him. If he does what? If he just calls the iqama. If he doesn't call the iqama, فَلْيَسْتَغْفِرْ رَبَّهُ. Shaykh ibn Ubaz, he says, it's a sin for a person not to call the iqama at least. If he is praying, even if he is praying by himself, he should call the iqama always. And if he doesn't, he should make tawbah and he should ask Allah to forgive him. Because it's an obligation. It's not a condition, but it is an obligation. Meaning that if a person forgets it, his salat is still valid. However, he is atham, and he is committing a sin. So the earth is a masjid for the Prophet ﷺ and his followers, and it is pure for them. فَأَيُّمَا رَجُلٍ أَدْرَكَتُ الصَّلَاةِ فَلْيُصَلِّي, and whoever man is caught by the salat, encounters the time of salat, and let him pray therefore. وَأُحِلَّتْ لِيَ الْغَنَائِمْ, and the ghanaim have been made permissible for me. The ghanaim have been made permissible for me. Even in the time of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when the Yahud were when Banu Israel, when they were in Ardul Tayh, and when they were in the wilderness wandering about for 40 years, and there are verses in the Quran where Allah tabarak wa ta'ala ordered them to make from their buyut a qibla, and to make their tents and so on and so forth, and their habitations. And when they were in Egypt and when they left Egypt, to make one of them the qibla, and to establish the salah. And so wherever they went, they had like a musalla that went with them, the Holy of Holies they called it, right? The Holy of Holies. And so they would take it with them wherever they went, so on and so forth. And for us, alhamdulillah, we pray, how to be inside of an enclosure, so on and so forth. The earth has been, and he made a masjid for the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And this was from these 5 things that no prophet was ever given before. And no prophet was ever given before. And so, whatever man encounters the salat, then, and the time of salat encounters him, then let him pray. Let him pray. And the ghanaim, the spoils of war, have been made permissible for me. And they were not made permissible for anyone before me. وَعُطِيتُ الشَّفَاعَةِ, and I was given the shafa'ah, the intercession. وَكَانَ النَّبِي صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يُبْعَثُ إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ خَاصًا. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala make us from those that receive the intercession of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. وَكَانَ النَّبِي صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يُبْعَثُ إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ خَاصًا. And every prophet was sent to his people in particular. And he sent only to his people, to his immediate people. وَبُعِثْتُ إِلَى النَّاسِ عَامَّةً. And I have been sent to all of mankind. One thing that's fascinating about this statement of the Prophet ﷺ, besides what is obvious, that we are 1437. Yes, 1437. Welcome. Right? There's no dua, there's no special anything that's done for the Islamic New Year, but we are in the Islamic New Year now, right? It's the Islamic New Year. 1437 years have passed since the Prophet ﷺ, right? So if you were going to string your lights up when you go home, change your plans. And we are sitting in a land that was not even known about in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And Islam has reached us. So that's obviously fascinating. That's one of the fascinating things from the narration. But one thing that's very fascinating from this narration is that in the times past, hundreds of years ago, there were many Christian sects that believed that Muhammad ﷺ was a prophet, but he wasn't sent to them. They couldn't refute that he was a prophet, because for whatever reason, you have to believe that Isa was a prophet, and those reasons they applied to Muhammad ﷺ more so. His time was closer, his miracles were witnessed by more people, the chain of narration to his miracles are mutawatir, many of them, so on and so forth, and he has something incontrovertible, irrefutable, his prophethood. And so this occurred in the time of Al-Imam Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala and Ibn Qayyim, and they both responded to the doubts of the Christians. And when the bishop was commissioned by the king of Cyprus to write king to the ruler, or to write a letter rather to the king of the Muslims, inviting him to kufr, Christianity. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala wrote a tremendous book, al-Jawab al-Sahih liman baddala deen al-Masih. He wrote 8 volumes back as a response to the letter of the bishop. He wrote 8 volumes back, and almost an entire volume is about this issue, which is that they believe that Muhammad ﷺ, they couldn't refute that he was a prophet. However, they said that he was just sent to the Arab. And so Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala spent nearly a volume of his tremendous book bringing the proofs and the evidences from the Quran and from the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and from the Tariq, from the history of the Muslims, showing and demonstrating that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent to all of mankind. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala allow us to learn that which we are ignorant of, and allow us to benefit from that which we learn, and increase us in knowledge. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.